Hi guys, Olive here today with a very exciting video. Today I would like to share with you my top 10 favorite nonfiction books of 2021. Before I start talking about the books, I will give my usual disclaimer that I give every year in these favorites videos. These are books that I personally read in 2021. They weren't necessarily published in 2021, although the vast majority of them were because I read so many new releases this year. And also this list is ranked, and I'll be speaking about them in reverse order. So I'm going to start with number 10, my least favorite, and then work my way up to number 1, my most favorite, so to speak. But let's start talking about the books. In spot number 10 is Broadway star Sutton Foster's memoir, which is called Hooked: How Crafting Saved My Life. In this book, the actress discusses her background, how she got into acting, what it was like taking on big roles on the stage and on the screen. She talks about her relationship with her parents, her romantic relationships, adopting her daughter, and through all of this, she discusses how crafting, particularly crocheting, helped her so much throughout various periods in her life. This is a very forthcoming, very heartfelt memoir. I thought it was remarkable how honest Sutton Foster was willing to get about her incredibly complex relationship with her mother and about her marriages. This is the rare celebrity memoir where I came out of the reading experience feeling like I really knew her. Not just that I had spent some time with her in book form, I often feel that way with any kind of memoir really, but by the end of this book, I feel like I got her, I understood her, and I admire her all the more now because she's just incredible. This book is beautiful. Coming in at number 9 is a sports book with an incredible title. It's called Tall Men, Short Shorts: The 1969 NBA Finals. Wilt, Russ, Lakers, Celtics, and a very young sports reporter by Lee Montville. The subtitle may give away what this one is about because it is indeed the story of how the underdog Celtics beat the Lakers in the 1969 NBA Finals. But this story is kind of the author's story as well, because back in 1969, Lee Montville was a newbie sports reporter covering these finals. So as an older man now writing this book, he's looking back at that time and back at that time in his life, and he just relentlessly pokes fun at his younger self and how green he was. It is hysterical. So even if you're not that into basketball, this one will thrill you and have you in stitches. I reviewed this one for the Christian Science Monitor, where I am lucky enough to get to write about sports books. I will link that review for you in the description box below if you'd like to give it a read. And hopefully hearing me talk about this book hasn't gotten the Nair jingle stuck in your head, because it's been stuck in mine since I read this book, and that was months ago. My number 8 nonfiction book of the year is called Featherhood, a memoir of two fathers and a magpie by Charlie Gilmore. This is the author's story of taking in an orphaned magpie chick and caring for it at a pivotal point in his life when he was trying to decide what, if any, relationship he wanted to have with his biological father. And he was doing all of this as he was also contemplating becoming a father himself. The writing in this book is just sublime. I am very rarely tempted to compare books to Helen Macdonald's H is for Hawk because it's one of my favorite nonfiction books of all time. But this book is good enough to make that comparison. If you like H is for Hawk, you will very likely enjoy this one also. I know I sure did. I gave it a full-length review here on this channel. I made a whole video about this book, which I will link for you in the description box below and up in the cards if you'd like to learn more about it. My number 7 favorite nonfiction book of the year is another one I reviewed here on this channel. It's called Under a White Sky: The Nature of the Future by Elizabeth Kolbert. This book is a collection of stories about scientists who are actively working to correct or mitigate human-caused environmental changes. This book is fascinating, it's concise, and it's powerful, largely because of the just masterful way that Elizabeth Kolbert writes. I thought this book was even better than her first book, book, and that first book was pretty good. And I think this one is also a must-read for anyone who wants to keep up to date on environmental issues. If you want to hear more about this book, I'll link my full review of it in the description box below and up in the cards. I reviewed it alongside the new one from Bill Gates. And then at number 6 is another beautifully written book. It's called Between Two Kingdoms, a memoir of a life interrupted by Suleika Jaouad. This author received a potentially fatal cancer diagnosis at age 22. And in this deeply emotional book, she talks about getting that diagnosis, going through the long and painful process of fighting the cancer, and then going on a 100-day cross-country road trip after she had beaten the cancer. Suleika Jaouad is brutally honest about this experience throughout this book, but the perspective she has on this time in her life and all the lessons she drew out of this experience, it's beyond admirable. And the writing in this book, it's perfection. I actually reviewed this book here on the channel as well in the early months of 2021. I was kind of a reviewing machine at that time, so I will link that video for you in the description box below and up in the cards. But since posting that video, I can tell you that a number of people have come to me to tell me that after taking me up on my recommendation and reading this book, that it became one of their favorites of the year as well. So I do think it's a solid recommendation. Just know that this book is a lot more about the cancer than it is about the road trip, contrary to what the cover may lead you to believe. But now moving into the top half of this list, my 5th favorite nonfiction book of the year is one of the year's biggest nonfiction books. It's called Empire of Pain: The Secret History of the Sackler Dynasty by Patrick Radden Keefe. This book is part history, part expose. The author discusses the Sackler family, owners of Purdue Pharma, the company that created and sells the highly addictive painkiller OxyContin, and the author talks about how this family used some pretty shady marketing tactics to get people hooked on their product. This book just recently won the prestigious Bailey Gifford Prize for Nonfiction, and for good reason. It is impeccably researched and written. It's a page-turner, for sure, which will feel really strange as you're reading it because the subject matter is so enraging. Like, you probably want to have a stress ball, maybe even a punching bag nearby, just something inanimate to direct your rage onto. This is a really important one to read if you want to understand how the opioid crisis got started, but it's also one that you'll want to read just because it's so well done. Coming in at number 4 is probably one of the lightest books on this list. It's called Word by Word: The Secret Life of Dictionaries by Corey Stamper. And in this book, the author, who spent the lion's share of her professional life working for Merriam-Webster, discusses what it's like working for the dictionary while having much larger discussions about what the job and purpose of dictionaries actually are. If you're going to love this book as much as I did, you'll need to have a tolerance for some nitty-gritty details about job functions, but even if you don't love those things about this book, the rest of the book is worth it. There's such thought-provoking information and questions in this book, and it's just a blast to read. It's charming, it's hilarious, and it's a little slice of heaven for all of us word nerds out there. This book is now my figurative cannonball that I really enjoy launching into the argument that nonfiction books can't be fun, because this book is a brain playground. We're moving into the best of the best. Third on this list is the gorgeous yet devastating memoir Memorial Drive by Natasha Trethewey. The author of this book is a former United States Poet Laureate, and in this book she wants to tell her own story, but also aims to tell her mother's story as well. In 1985, when this author was just 19 years old, her mother was murdered by the author's former stepfather, her mother's ex-husband. This book is not easy reading, just because of the weight of the subject matter, but you can tell on every single page that this author is a poet because of how beautifully she tells this absolutely heartbreaking story. But the best part about this book may be how much power the author claims through writing this book. She claims power for her mother. She tells her mother's story, and often we get to hear her mother's own words telling the story of what was happening to her prior to the murder. But also the author claims power on her own behalf, turning this unimaginable tragedy into something beautiful, this book, this work of art that she's created. I made a whole video about this book and how I received it. I actually got it through the book club service Literati. I don't have the copy that they sent me at the moment because, wouldn't you know it, I lent my copy to my mother. And I definitely didn't miss the significance of that fact. I felt very privileged, very grateful to be able to hand this book to my mother and share the reading experience with her. So if you'd like to hear me talk more about this book, I will link the video I made in the description box below and up in the cards. Now, my second favorite book on this list is the book that I thought was going to take the top spot, especially because I read this book twice this year, and I tried to write about it, I tried to review it, and just couldn't because it got too painful and too personal for me. That book is called Stranger Care, a memoir of loving what isn't ours by Sarah Centillas. This book is the author's story and her husband's story of fostering a baby girl with the hopes of adopting her, but eventually having to return that baby to her birth mother, even if it wasn't necessarily the best place for that baby to be. It's a heartbreaking story, and to be clear, the author made plenty of mistakes during this process, which she acknowledges, and there were also lots of mistakes made by people within the system that is supposed to be protecting children. But the honesty with which the author tells her story, and how beautifully she writes, had me absolutely awestruck. I highly suspect I will be rereading this book many times in the future. But my favorite nonfiction book of 2021? Let's just say it's not the one I thought would take the top spot, but I can't deny its rightful place at the top of this list. She's used to being number one, after all. It's Billie Jean King's astonishing autobiography, All In. Billie Jean King is a tennis legend. She's a trailblazer for women in sports. She's a powerful role model in the LGBT community, and in this book, she talks about it all. Her upbringing, finding tennis, deciding that she wanted to be the number one tennis player in the world and going about achieving that. She talks about having to fight male-dominated systems in male-dominated spaces to even get the right to play. She talks about that match with Bobby Riggs. She discusses the relationship she had with her now ex-husband. She talks about being outed via a scandal. And she also talks about the stand she took to demand women in tennis receive equal pay. There is nothing she holds back. There is nothing she doesn't cover. She is blunt, she calls things what they are, and she makes it clear she's not done yet. This book transcends sports. It is worth reading even if you don't care at all about tennis. It'll just be made all the better if you do care about the sport that she loves. But this woman is an icon for a reason. She has done so much in so many spheres. And in this book, she speaks so honestly about the failures, the lessons, and the successes. And this book is one of the many successes. I am not always this lucky, but I am over the moon to be able to say that I reviewed my favorite nonfiction book of 2021 in print. I wrote about this book for the Christian Science Monitor. I'll link that review for you in the description box below if you would like to learn more about this spectacular book. So those were my favorite nonfiction books of 2021, and it was a pretty great nonfiction reading year for me. So those really were the best of the best. I don't think you can go wrong with any of them. All of them will be linked in the description box below for your clicking convenience. And there will also be links in the description box below to all of the videos I've made in prior years discussing my nonfiction favorites, just in case you're looking for even more good books to read. And if you would like to keep up with what I'm reading and writing about right now, you can find me on a variety of places around the internet, including Goodreads and Instagram, where I'm the most active. The links to everywhere you can find me will be at the bottom of the description box below. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.